Welcome to Sola Church Online.
I'm Alan Rigg. This is my wife, Miranda Landers, and together we lead Sola Church, a hybrid church, digital plus micro.
And if you're wondering what is digital church, well, you are here right now with us having digital church. We put a new service up every Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific time on our Church Online platform.
And then micro church, that's our small groups called life groups that meet during the week. We've got in-person groups and we've got online groups. We'll tell you more about that at the end of the service.
And I think you're going to enjoy the service today. Let's worship.
Time to worship. Come, now is the time to give your heart. Come, just as you are to worship. Come, just as you are. Time to worship. Come, now is the time to give your heart. Come, just as you are to worship. Come, just as you are before. Time to worship. Oh, come. Now is the time to give your heart. Come, just as you are to worship. Come, just as you are before. Blessed be your name when I'm found in the desert place. Though I walk through the wilderness, blessed be your name. And every blessing you pour out, I'll turn be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Give and take away. Give and take away. Heart will choose to say, Lord, blessed be your name.
This is that time in our service when we worship with our giving. If you're just checking us out today, please don't feel like you have to participate. But if Sola Church is your church home, or these online services have just been a blessing to you, it's super easy to make a one-time tax-deductible donation or even to schedule a recurring gift.
The easiest way is to scan the QR code on your screen. But you can always go to solachurch.live and click the tab at the top that says Give.
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys so much for your generosity. Your giving makes it possible for us to create this digital content, to do our micro church gatherings, to do outreach. So thank you guys.
Let's get into our time of teaching.
Have you guys heard of shrinkflation? You know what shrinkflation is? Shrinkflation is where instead of a company raising their prices, they reduce, the amount of product that you're gonna get. Yeah, I've got an example of shrinkflation for you. I like Boston baked beans. Anybody like Boston baked beans? Little candied peanuts. It feels like you're not cheating. It feels like it's sort of health food. That's what I tell myself. These are the lies we tell ourselves. So somebody who knew that I loved Boston baked beans got me a box of said beans. And this box was impressive. Like, it was the biggest box of candy I'd ever seen. Just a huge box. I was so excited. But then I opened it up, and inside was a bag only about half the size of the box. And then I opened the bag, and the bag was only about half filled with Boston baked beans. And I'm like, Boston baked beans? Boston baked bummer, more like it. Like, I don't understand this whole shrinkflation thing. The price doesn't change, and the quantity just keeps going down and down and down. So be careful today at the Super Bowl party when you open that party-sized bag of Lay's chips and there's one chip in the bottom of the bag. You might want to read the weight on the bottom. Oh, man. We live in a world where things aren't what they appear to be, where things are sometimes fake, where people are sometimes phony, and no one is immune. You and I, we could finish sentences like these. At home, I feel phony when. At work or school, I feel phony when. On social media, I feel phony when. At church, I feel phony when. Yeah, even at church. And in the Bible, this phoniness, well, it's called hypocrisy. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. Let's go ahead and open the Bible to the Gospel according to San Marcos. That's the book of Mark in the New Testament. And we've called this series Marked because, well, Jesus has marked us. And as we study this story about Jesus, we're being marked, right? Not just for us, but for the city of San Marcos and for all of North County and beyond. Some of those who will watch later online are in LA County or other states across the country or even in other parts of the world. But as we study this gospel together, we're becoming unstoppable, unerasable, marked. And in our text today, Jesus challenges the idea that faith is about appearances or even religious performance. It has to do with our hearts. So we're going to learn about that. We're going to call this one Marked by Authenticity. Let's talk first about an inauthentic faith, and then we'll talk about an authentic faith. So an inauthentic faith, some of the ways that we live inauthentically, some of the ways that we're phony. We're picking it up in Mark 7. Did I even say the chapter? Mark 7 in verse 1. It says, "Then the Pharisees and some of the scribes came together to him, to Jesus, having come from Jerusalem. Now, when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is, with unwashed hands, they found fault. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they wash their hands in a special way, holding the tradition of the elders. When they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash. And there are many other things which they have received and hold, like the washing of cups, pitchers, copper vessels, and couches." Then the Pharisees and scribes asked him, "Why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands?" So Pharisees enter stage left. You know, I had some friends who saw Peter Pan in live theater, not at the movies, but they saw live theater production of Peter Pan, and they were telling me about their experience. I wanted to know afterwards, like how was it? Was it fun? Did you have a good time? And they said that the best part was when Captain Hook took the stage for the first time. And as the audience spotted him, they all began to boo. Some of them were hissing. And the actor stopped right where he was, turned to the audience and said, "But I haven't done anything yet." And the audience laughed like you're laughing now, because they weren't expecting him to turn and address them, to break the fourth wall, as it were. But for us, it's kind of like that, you know, when we have these preconceived ideas about the Pharisees. And so when we read that they enter stage left, our first inclination is to boo and maybe even to hiss. Perhaps it would be helpful to talk just a little bit about the Pharisees, this ancient fraternity. In the first century, they were about 6,000 strong. And the name Pharisee meant separate. So they were separatists. They practiced separatism. They separated themselves not only from things, but from people. Yeah, separatism. It's funny because although, again, we would boo and hiss as they took the stage, in the first century, they were widely respected. They were known for being serious about Scripture, for being disciplined in daily life, and they were admired by ordinary people. So, truth is, they were closer to model church members than they were to villains. But the interesting thing is that you know, over time, they had begun to experience a kind of drift of their own. We're going to see more of that as we go along. But as a result of that, Jesus found himself at odds with them, frequently butting heads over things like fasting. We've already seen that in Mark. Sabbath observance. We've seen that in Mark too. Here, in this case, over hand washing. Now, this whole thing about hand washing, well, it really didn't have anything to do with hygiene. That's a good reason to wash one's hands, especially before you eat. But it really didn't have so much to do with that. It really didn't even have that much to do with manners. Do you know anyone with bad table manners? Maybe you're elbowing the person next to you right now. Yeah, I see some very discreet little fingers here and there. Oh man, I mean, like chewing with your mouth open, talking with your mouth full, picking your teeth while others are still eating, blowing your nose. Like every family at Thanksgiving, Christmas, you've always got the nose blower. You know, it's one thing before or after everyone's eaten, but mid-meal to whip out the handkerchief because they're a professional. and to just unload. And it's like, oh my word, like how long has that been in there? Like, I don't even know what's happening right now. It's funny because this week I was thinking about something that happened to me so many years ago. When I was a kid, I had this friend named Lance. And I was at his house one day when his mother gave us bananas. I can say with all just the seriousness and earnestness that I have, that I wish I had never seen that kid eat a banana. Because, I mean, what he did to that banana was just unspeakable. I mean, he was a smacker. And I saw things that day that I cannot unsee. I heard things that I cannot unhear. Sometimes, I mean, this is 50 years later, and there are times when I peel a banana and take a bite that I think about Lance and just go, like it's like a reflex, man. I can't even hardly do it. The battle is real, I'm telling you. So the thing is that it really didn't have anything to do with all of this. You notice the reference to the tradition of the elders in verses 3 and 5. This is the so-called fence. Now, I realize not everyone here today was here this Sunday that I'm referring to, so I'm going to revisit something, just enough to remind you if you were here, just enough to familiarize you if you weren't. We talked about this idea of the fence and the Torah. In Deuteronomy 22, verse 8, it talked about how, if you had outdoor space on the roof of your house, which was normal in the ancient world, you had to build a parapet. You had to put a fence around the edge for people's safety. And so this idea had been brought into the idea of, our relationship with God and following God's laws. And so what we said in the message earlier in the series is that if God gave us an actual rule, God actually said, don't do this thing, or do this thing, could be a do, could be a don't. If he gave us a rule, then that line is right here. And so well-meaning people said, well, the best way to keep from ever crossing this line would be to put a line over here and never cross it. If I don't ever cross this line, I won't have to worry about crossing that line. So you wind up with a rule to protect the rule. And pretty soon you've got a rule to protect the rule that protects the rule. And then you've got a rule to protect the rule that protects the rule that protects the rule. And you've gotten so far away from anything that God ever said not to do or to do. It's just a man-made rule. It's just a tradition. But sometimes, a community of faith like a local church can confuse this fence around a fence around a fence around a fence as being like the Word of God, God's law for us. Like I said, it starts with good intentions. And so, in the Jewish world over time, lots and lots and lots of these oral traditions had been generated, and they were eventually collected. The Mishnah, around 200 AD, collects all of these oral traditions. And there's lots of good and helpful things in there. But they are fences. And people start to confuse the fences with the real thing, the thing that God actually said. So in this particular case, in the law, in the Mosaic law, the rules were actually, the God-given rules, the real things were around priests at the temple. But the fence had become about people at the table. And so we get further and further away from the actual thing. Notice that everybody now is doing this, and they're to do it, verse 3, in a special way. This hand washing had to be done in a special way. We all had an experience with this about 6 years ago during a season that we sometimes call COVID. Remember all the ideas about how we should wash our hands? Like, it was very specific. We were supposed to lather our hands by rubbing them together with soap. And then we were to lather the backs of our hands. And then we were to make sure that we washed between our fingers. And then we were to make sure that we got under the fingernails. Like I developed some skills, some hand washing skills. And they not only told us how to do it, but they told us how long to do it. They said we needed to do it for about 20 seconds. Now, few of us were going to actually set a timer on our iPhone, 20 seconds. So they suggested that if you sing happy birthday twice, it would be about 20 seconds. So, how many of you at one time or another were happy birthday to you, making your way through the 20 seconds? I heard about, at one point in time, somebody, I don't know how this originally came about, but somebody discovered that the average Taylor Swift chorus lasts about 20 seconds. So any Swifties out there, you could just pick your favorite Taylor Swift song, sing the chorus while you washed your hands. You'd probably get your 20 seconds in. And then I heard about a guy who had his own ideas about that. He decided that he was going to hum the death march from Star Wars, the Imperial Death March. Dun, 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 dun. I mean, and that, you got to admit, that fits the mood of 2020. Dun, 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 dun. You can try it at home. Have some fun with it. But these guys, I don't know exactly how they did all of it, but I know how they did some of it. Like, they had to use a specific quantity of water. And once they put the water on their hands, they had to hold their hands up while the water rolled down to the end of their hand. And once it reached the end of their hand, they had to hold their hands down so the water would roll back off again. Like, it was a very specific way you had to do it. They did it before meals and after meals. And if you were especially observant, you would not only do it before and after meals, but you would do it between courses. And if you did it wrong, you had to do it again. So there was a lot of hand washing going on. And the more hand washing you did, the more spiritual you looked. The more godly you appeared to be in the eyes of other people. So verse 6, he answered and said to them, well did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites, as it is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. For laying aside the commandment of God, you hold the tradition of men, the washing of pitchers and cups, and many other such things you do. Now, notice that word hypocrites in verse 6. You know, have you ever been called a hypocrite? Oh, man. I mean, especially by like someone who's not a person of faith. That's hard, isn't it? Christians get called a lot of things. Sometimes we get called narrow-minded. Sometimes we get called intolerant. Sometimes we get called judgmental. And sometimes we are those things. Those things hurt, but they're survivable. The one that really sticks is hypocrite. When somebody drops the H-bomb, that's what hurts. That's what hurts is when the H-bombs start flying around. It's like, oh no. I mean, that's kind of our sensitive place, right? Maybe it would be helpful for us to understand what a hypocrite was in the first century. A hypocrite was an actor. You know, today, if you were an actor, somebody said, you know, what do? You say, well, I'm an actor. Well, then you would say, I'm a hypocrite. That was the Greek word. The Greek word that's translated hypocrite was their word for actor. And it referred to actors who wore masks. You know, think about like an ancient theater where you might have a large audience, and many of them would be sitting far from the stage. You didn't have screens. You know, you didn't have a PA system. So they wore these masks that had exaggerated features on them. Sometimes they would even swap the mask out throughout the performance from a mask that was exaggeratedly happy to a mask that was exaggeratedly sad. And many of these masks had little devices in them that served to sort of, to some small degree, with the best technology that they had, to sort of amplify the voice a little bit. So a hypocrite was an actor who never really showed their true face and who had these exaggerated features to create a certain effect, a certain impression in the eyes of the people who saw them. And so Jesus was quoting from Isaiah 29, verse 13, where the idea was that there is this disconnect between what they said and who they were at their core. They were hiding their true selves. And they were hiding behind their traditions. It goes on in verse 13, Jesus said to them, all too well you reject the commandment of God that you may keep your tradition. For Moses said, honor your father and your mother, and he who curses father or mother, let him be put to death. But you say, if a man says to his father or mother, whatever profit you might have received from me is Corban, that is a gift to God, then you no longer let him do anything for his father or his mother, making the word of God of no effect through your tradition, which you have handed down, and many such things you do. So Jesus gives another example. And in this case, instead of the hand washing, it is this Corban thing, which we're going to talk a little bit about. Jesus, what did the law say? Remember, we're talking about, the actual law and then the fence or fences that have been created. So with the hand washing, you had, priests had to wash in the temple, but the fence had become that everybody had to wash before they posted up at the table. So in this case, the fence is this thing about honoring parents, which we're going to define. And the law is that. And then we're going to talk about what the fence was. So in the ancient world, this idea of honor, it wasn't just about our attitude toward our parents or our respect for them, though it certainly included that. But it was relational and it was practical. Honoring one's parents involved caring for them, providing for them, taking responsibility for them. And so the fence is the Corban thing. And this is really different than the other example for this reason. In the first example, the hand washing, the fence, which meant that more people had to wash their hands and more often, was meant to keep people from breaking the rule. But in this case, this Corban thing is exactly the opposite. It was a workaround to help people avoid keeping the rule. The idea was that if you said, everything that I have, I'm dedicating to God. It's Corban, my estate, my house, my retirement, all of my cash, all of my belongings, all of my things are dedicated to God. They're Corban. Then you were not allowed to use them any other way. And you could not help your parents. So what you had is you had people who didn't want to help their parents and who may have not had no intention of ever giving those dedicated things to God. Like when you dedicated it to God, you didn't immediately give it away. You still had it. Just like eventually when you dedicate it to God, it's Corban. So maybe they were thinking about it. Maybe they knew they were never going to do it. But because it was Corban, they're off the hook. Sorry, Mom. Sorry, Dad. Sorry you don't have a roof over your head. Sorry you don't have any food to eat. Sorry you don't have any clothes that fit. Sorry your shoes are worn out. I would help you if I could, but I can't because I dedicated everything to God. I mean, what a terrible thing. They were once again hiding their true selves. They were hiding this lack of honor for their parents and for God behind this pretend honor of God. They were hiding behind their traditions. So one of the ways that we're authentic is hiding. We hide. I hide. You hide. We do. We hide our true selves. It's what's behind our response to peer pressure when we're teenagers. It's the reason for our people pleasing as adults. It's why we hide on a first date and a second date and a third date. And why maybe after 10 or 20 years of marriage, you're still hiding your true self. It's why we're not honest and forthcoming in job interviews. I wonder how many people are really brutally honest when they're asked, tell us about your strengths and weaknesses. Well, I'm a crook. You can't trust me further than you can throw me. Like who's ever said that in a job interview? Oh my goodness. But again, this idea that we're all hiding, it's why we're phony around people that we like a lot. And it's why we're phony around people we don't like at all. Does your life revolve around what people think? Are you hiding at home, at work, at school, at church? At church. At church. Why do we feel the need to hide at church? Why do we feel the need to hide our doubts? Why do we feel the need to hide our mistakes? Why do we feel the need to hide our struggles? Why do we feel the need to hide our stories? We're gonna double back to this thought later, but first I want you to notice something in the verses we've already read. Verse 2, now when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is, with unwashed hands, they found fault. In verse 5, then the Pharisees and scribes asked him, why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands? So notice that phrase, found fault, in verse 2. Inauthentic people. You and me, when we're struggling with inauthenticity, are fault finders. inauthentic people, people who are fake, people who are phony, me when I'm living from that place, we become cynical, we become mistrustful. I actually think that our cynicism and our mistrust says more about us than it does about the people around us. Not that no one has, any innocent reason for being mistrustful. Some people have had some experiences that understandably would make you mistrustful of other people. I don't mean that. But I mean in just a broader, more general way that in my experience, oftentimes the people who are real quick to spot phoniness in others are projecting. They're so familiar with, that as an MO that they know it when they see it. And so, if you know someone who just thinks that everybody around them is lying to them, and no one around them can be trusted, who questions and doubts the motivations of everyone in their world, there's a real good chance you ought to be super careful with them. You ought to be real mindful about your relationship with them. So what happens though now is that if we're in this place, we start to compare ourselves with others. We start to contrast ourselves with others. We start even to compete in some way with other people. When you're thinking about spirituality and thinking about how you practice your faith, if we're coming from this inauthentic place, we can very much land in this spot of, how are we doing compared to how they're doing? Is their performance better than ours? Are they outperforming us? I'm going to feel bad about myself. Am I outperforming them? I'm going to feel good about myself. And it can become a competitive thing. This is obviously really unhealthy. One way that we're inauthentic is hiding. Another way that we're inauthentic is spying. You can see how that obviously goes hand in hand. This spying thing comes hand in hand when we start making the comparisons and we start making the contrasts. It's kind of the other side of the coin, or it's complementary in some way. I saw one time I was reading where somebody was explaining our fascination with celebrity culture. How people, lots and lots of people love to read celebrity magazines, maybe love to watch reality TV shows that star celebrities, maybe even like to follow celebrities on social media and see what they're posting. And so there are some psychologists who think that part of what's happening behind that is that we're secretly hoping that they're no different than us, or even that they're not as good as us in some way. We're comparing, we're contrasting, we're competing. And this voyeurism makes its way into our spiritual lives too. I just think that sometimes our unhappiness with other people really is unhappiness with ourselves. And we make these comparisons to make ourselves feel better. If nothing else, talking about you is better than talking about me. Like looking critically at you so that we don't ever have to take a critical look at me. Does your life revolve around what others think? Is there like a fear of exposure? Do you find yourself constantly second guessing yourself? Replaying conversations over and over in your mind. I wish I had said this. I wish I hadn't said that. Do you find that you're easily embarrassed? Do you catch yourself frequently telling little white lies? Or frequently feeling jealous of other people? Yeah, there's a good chance that you're dealing with inauthenticity. So, marked by authenticity, it's a struggle. It's a struggle to not fall into an inauthentic way of being in this world, even when it comes to our faith. But let's talk about an authentic faith, how to be true, how to live from that authentic place. Verse 14. When he had called all the multitude to himself, he said to them, "Hear me, everyone, and understand. There is nothing that enters a man from outside which can defile him. But the things which come out of him, those are the things that defile a man. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear." Now notice the word hear 3 times in our verses that we just read. It's once in verse 14, twice in verse 16. So one way that we can become more authentic is to take our cues from Jesus, who says, "Hear me." We need to take our cues from him and not from other people, not from the people around us. This is sort of an alternative to spying on other people. Inauthentic faith is reactive. It's shaped by what we see others doing. But authentic faith is responsive. It's shaped by what Jesus says. So again, these words, hear me, in verse 14. You know, one thing that's interesting about public speaking, I mean, it's true of public speaking in other arenas, so to speak, as well, but certainly, you know, as a pastor speaking to, you know, a faith community, to a congregation, if you will, you know, you're watching me speak. But at the same time, I'm watching you listen. And after decades of doing this, I mean, the stories, I know Sam knows what I'm talking about, the stories we could tell about the time I saw somebody clipping their nails while I'm giving the message, and, you know, and then the clippings were on the carpet after the service, like they left, and they left a little gift, and like the things you see, like what in the world would possess a person to do something like that? Some people take notes, and that's a good thing to do. You know, if you take notes, whether you're, you know, writing in a little journal, or, you know, nowadays we have notepads on our phones. I know when you're looking at your phone, you're not reading the pregame on the Super Bowl. I know you're writing down something quotable that you want to remember later. I know. but yeah, so, you know, some people take notes, but others just pass them. Like I've seen like people jot a little note, pass it. The other person jot a little note, pass it back. Like, what does it say? What are they talking about? I'm starving. Are you? Yes, no. Pass it. Yes. Where should we go for lunch? Fill in the blank. I don't know. Is that what's happening? Now people are probably more likely to be texting each other from the next seat. Like, I'm hungry, are you? On their phones. But yeah, other people listen with their elbows. I talked about that before. Listening with your elbows, that's listening for what the person next to you needs and letting them know. Like, that was for you, buddy. Like, I hope you're... Stop writing notes and start taking them, because that was for you. That thing he just said, that was... Still, other people listen with their eyes, by which I mean the backs of the lids of their eyes. Oh man, when I was pastoring in Santa Monica, there was this one brother, Lord bless him, love him. He had difficulty sleeping at night. He had no difficulty sleeping in church. And there were times that while I was speaking, I had to wander to the second or third row and just kind of put a hand on his shoulder. I'm still speaking, I'm still giving the message, but give him a little love squeeze to just let him know that he's snoring and people outside can hear it. Oh boy. Well, when Jesus says, hear me, obviously it's going to go deeper. It's going to go deeper than what I've talked about with regards to listening so far. But let me say this, when our lives revolve around what others think, we're hearing them. Maybe we could compare that to what the Bible is talking about when it talks about the fear of man. But when our lives revolve around what God thinks, we're hearing him. Maybe in some sense we could think of that as the fear of God. But you know what was happening with Jesus' audience? Because of the way that the Pharisees were, and because of the influence that they had. In Matthew 15, verse 14, Jesus calls them to blind guides leading the blind, and suggests that they're all going to fall into a ditch, which means that they had blind spots. They were blinded by pride. They were know-it-alls. And we have blind spots too. I have blind spots. You have blind spots. There's always somebody like, not me. I don't have any blind spots. That's why they're called blind spots. You can't see them, but you have them. Just ask the person next to you with the elbows. They know that you have them. I mean, the truth is that some of us have created so many personas, we can't even keep them straight anymore. And we've got a blind spot to that. Like, we don't even realize how much we've complicated our lives by becoming one person at home and another person at work or school and still another person at church. And eventually you find it hard to keep those straight. You'll find yourself saying something in one place that you would normally only say in another place. And, even being a kind of way that you would never be in one place, but only in another place. And it can get hard to even keep track of which persona, which mask. Okay, I'm home. Okay, I'm at church. Got to keep switching those masks out. But what we need is this humility. If we're humble, if we're teachable, if we'll hear him. Look at verse 17. Then when he had entered a house away from the crowd, his disciples asked concerning the parable. So he said to them, are you thus without understanding also? Do you not perceive that whatever enters a man from outside cannot defile him? Because it does not enter his heart, but his stomach, and is eliminated, thus purifying all foods? And he said, what comes out of man, that defiles a man, for from within, out of the heart of man proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lewdness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile a man. And with that, Jesus shifts the conversation from hands to hearts. You notice the reference to the disciples in verse 17. It was Peter. Matthew tells us that it was Peter serving as a spokesperson for the rest of the group. And when Jesus said what he did, I do want you to notice in verse 19, it says that phrase. See the phrase in verse 19, thus purifying all foods? So there's a question. In the New King James Version, which is what I'm teaching out of, it's in quotations. It's understood to be part of what Jesus said. Not every translation understands it that way. The manuscripts that they're translating don't have punctuation in them, so they've got to figure out, did Jesus say that, or is that Mark's commentary on what Jesus said? We don't know for sure. I think it's very likely that it was Mark's commentary on what Jesus said. That Mark, based on what Jesus had said, Mark was telling his readers that in saying that, Jesus had suspended the dietary laws of the Old Testament. A lot of the stuff that the Mosaic Law said not to eat, you weren't going to eat anyway. But there are some things in that list that I very much enjoy eating, and I'm so thankful that Jesus said what he did, quote, thus purifying all foods, end quote. So remember that Mark's source is thought to be Peter, and Peter had a very similar experience in Acts chapter 10. But hey, it's Super Bowl Sunday, so just remember God isn't judging how many bags of chips, nachos, wings, dips, but what comes out of your heart afterwards. So notice the word understand in verse 14 and understanding in verse 18. Another way that we can become more authentic is addressing the heart, understanding what Jesus is saying about it not being about the hands, but being about the heart. So many times we want to make it about the stuff on the outside, about the stuff people can see. And that's relatively easy to do. It's relatively easy to take a performative approach. And when we do that, now we've gone from spiritual voyeurism to spiritual exhibitionism. Now we want to be performative, and we want to make sure that people see it, that people are watching it, taking note of it. But notice also that word heart 3 times in our text, verses 6, 19, and 21. The heart of the matter is the matter of the heart. We can be so focused on performative faith that we miss the heart, where true spiritual formation takes place, where we're managing appearances and externals. It's kind of like the difference between reputation and character. If reputation is what people think about us, and character is what God knows about us. And you know what I've discovered in my life? I've discovered that if I focus on my reputation, what others think about me, my character suffers, what God knows about me. But if I focus on my character, what God knows about me, my reputation, what people think about me, largely follows. It has a way of working itself out, has a way of taking care of itself. So which are you focused on in this season of your life? Are you focused on your reputation? Are you focused on what other people, even people here at church, think about you? Or are you focused on your character? Focused on who you're becoming? Who God in his grace and by the power of his Spirit is making you? We don't have to hide our true selves because God loves us and accepts us. We don't have to spy on others, comparing and contrasting because we're not competing for their approval. Our validation comes from God, so be yourself. You know, it's funny as we talk about hypocrisy because it is something that people say a lot about Christians. Oh, they're all a bunch of hypocrites. Like, no, I don't want to go to church because it's just all a bunch of hypocrites. Well, first of all, let me just go on record as saying that the church, the faith community, does not have a monopoly on hypocrisy. That I have experienced hypocrisy in every arena of life, both in the faith community and far from it. Where do members of the faith community come from? They're just a subset of the larger population. We bring this with us. And thankfully, Jesus is working on us and helping us learn and helping us grow and helping us become something different from that. But in fact, it's a very common thing to struggle with. But at church, it is a problem. It is a problem. Some of us have learned the hard way that church isn't always safe space. You learn that? I'll bet you there's more than one person here. There was a moment in time when you got brave. You got brave enough to tell your story. Maybe it was a messy story. And you shared it thinking that it was going to be safe for you to do that, only to then experience at some point in some church, maybe it was years ago, but only to experience shaming and shushing and shunning. And you learn very quickly that whatever church could be and whatever church should be, it is in fact not safe space. It wasn't for you, but it could be. You know how we could make Mission 316 the safe place that it is going forward? You know how we could make it just like I would want it to get safer and safer and safer. Like I would want every Sunday to feel safer than the Sunday before. Like if we could just be on a path like that, how great would that be? And you know the two things we could do that would keep us in that safe space and help us move into even safer space? Number one would be to tell our stories. I don't talk about it all the time, but I talk about it from time to time. My divorce back in 2010. Sometimes people wonder why I talk about it. And you know, maybe I should talk about it more, maybe I should talk about it less. But I'll tell you why I talk about it often is because when I tell my story, I give you permission to tell yours. When I tell my story, I tell you that this is safe space. It's safe for me, and it's safe for you. We need to tell our stories. But the second thing we need to do is that we need to support others as they tell theirs. When you tell your story, I will not shame you. When you tell your story, I will not shush you. When you tell your story, I will not shun you. That's powerful. We do that together and we've really got something. We create a culture that can be open and honest, transparent and vulnerable, where not only can anyone believe, but where everyone belongs.
And now it's time to fill out a Connect card.
Yeah, just go to our website, solidchurch.life, and scroll to the bottom of the homepage, letting us know that you watched today, but also you can request information there about our small groups. And there is actually a lot more information on the website about those. At the top, if you click where it says Gather, you'll find information about all of our groups. An in-person group on Tuesday on the west side, an online group on Wednesday, another in-person group on Thursday on the west side. So check it out, find the time, the date, the location that works best for you, and join us for Sola Micro Church.
And don't forget, go and follow Sola Church on social media.
Yep, at Sola Church LA on all your favorite platforms.
And we hope that everyone has a great week. And we will see you next time at Sola Church Online.
Bye, everybody.